Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just sharing the announcements about Milton handcuffs, so thank you for saying that. But it's my pleasure to be able to introduce Judge Milton Mack. If those of you who, I see a lot of familiar faces from our October forum, he was the moderator extraordinaire, so we invited him back for this evening because he did such a phenomenal job. So I would just like to share, for those of you who don't know who Judge Milton Mack is, he's appointed State Court Administrator in 2015. Before that, he served as a judge for Wayne County Probate Court from 1990 to 2015, and as Chief Judge of that court from 1998 to 2015. Judge Mack currently serves as a member of Governor Snyder's Mental Health Diversion Council. He also served on Governor Granholm's Michigan Mental Health Commission in 2004. The Michigan Partners in Crisis Public Policy Committee, and the Michigan Supreme Court Guardianship Task Force. Judge Mack is the author of a 2016 policy paper entitled Decriminalization of Mental Illness, Fixing a Broken System. He also wrote Involuntary Treatment for the 21st Century, published in the Quinnipiac Probate Law Journal in 2008. In 2017, he received the Snyder Koch Award from the Mental Health Association of Michigan, was named Judge of the Year by the Michigan Guardianship Association, and Advocate of the Year by the Michigan National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI. We are so grateful and honored to have you here this evening.
So, it's my understanding that my job here today is to keep order and prevent any filibusters. So, there'll be time for questions when we get through everything, and I think it'll go well. We had a good panel discussion back before the election. Now that people have spoken, now what? So, we hope to find that out today. So, we have a very distinguished panel here today, starting with Ken Stecker. Ken has been, since March of 2008, the Michigan Traffic Safety Resource Prosecutor for the Prosecutors Association of Michigan. He's previously served as an assistant prosecuting attorney in Kalamazoo County, Branch County, and in Branch County, assistant prosecutor. So, he's been recognized by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration for his outstanding service in providing expert legal advice and training resources to Michigan's criminal justice community. And in 2017, Monroe County honored Ken for his work in training local law enforcement on Michigan's marijuana laws. Ken is a graduate of Loyola Marymount University and the University of Detroit Law School. So, Ken, do you want to kick it off? Would you like to introduce the rest of the panel before we get started? Let's do, I don't want to keep you in too much suspense. So we have Jason Schwartz. He's been with Dawn Farms since 1994 and has served as clinical director since 1999, overseeing services through Dawn Farms Continuum of Care, 2 residential treatment sites, a non-medical detox and outreach center, adult and adolescent outpatient services, corrections outreaches, and transitional housing. Jason is also a lecturer at Eastern Michigan University School of Social Work, one of the truly outstanding universities in the state of Michigan. I can say that because I went there. So we have Chad Lau, Deputy Director of the Canton Police Department. He's been with the department for 23 years. Doesn't look old enough. No. So, he has a Master's of Science degree and is a graduate of Eastern Michigan University's Police Staff and Command School.
Excellent.
Deputy Director Blau has been assigned to various positions within the agency, including both investigations and patrol functions. He's currently in charge of day-to-day operations of the police department. He has recently concentrated on ensuring that Canton police officers are best positioned to understand the legal aspects of the Michigan Regulation and Marijuana Act for the Canton community. And finally, the ultimate authority in any matter, Judge Mark McConnell. First elected to the 18th District Court in Westland in 2009. He previously was an associate attorney with Angela Plakus and Associates in 1995. Served as assistant Westland State Attorney and prosecutor in that time. Also served as a research attorney for the Michigan Court of Appeals. And I'll tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody else. They're the ones who write the opinions for the Court of Appeals. I'll keep that secret between you and me. presides over sobriety court and is an advisory board member for this chapter of FAN. He received a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Bowling Green State University, which is in the MAC conference, so it's associated with Eastern Michigan University. And he received his Juris Doctorate degree from University of Detroit Law School of Law, cum laude. So he's actually smart, too. We'll see. All right, Ken, you're up.
Yeah, I went to the University of Detroit School of Law, but I didn't receive. I'm not that smart. So.
It's worth waiting for. I've seen his presentation.
It used to work. It still does.
And then you can hit anybody with that.
So,
Okay, good evening, everybody. Once again, my name is Ken Stecker. Just a little background on myself. I do have a bipolar daughter. She's 23 years of age, so it's really, at times, it's difficult. I also have an 11-year-old son, or we have an 11-year-old son, so today he learned about drugs and alcohol at school. They're teaching him that already at 11 years of age, so it's incredible how young they're already teaching our children about drugs and alcohol because it starts so early. My job here today is just to give you a background at where we're at with marijuana in Michigan. I'm really setting the table for the three of them, so I'm just putting it all on that after I pretty much give my little presentation here. I just want you to know where we're at and where we're going with this particular issue and really understanding what this is all about, all right? So here's the deal. This is what it's all about. It's the changing world of marijuana. It's not the joints or the ditchweed back from the early 70s or the late 70s. It's all about the new product. It's no different than like big tobacco or big alcohol. We now have the big marijuana industry, so to speak. So here's some of the popular products you really need to pay attention to because there are three very popular products, and we'll talk about a couple of those products here today. These are THC-laced gummy bears, without a doubt, very popular. This is the butane hash oil. We'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. That is Girl Scout cookies, not the Girl Scout cookies like the Thin Mints that you get from your Girl Scout out there. That's really potent and really THC heavily laced. That is Shatter over there. We'll talk about Shatter. This is the #1 product in Colorado. Colorado is both a medical marijuana state and a recreational marijuana state. That's a gummy bear. That's equivalent to 10 doses in that THC-laced gummy bear. So you take the ear, you take the other ear, you get the nose, the first ear starts to kick in, and you start really feeling the effects of that particular gummy bear. This too is also very popular. This is cannabis coffee, caffeine-laced THC coffee, another very popular product. Just to let you know, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but under federal law, it still remains a Schedule I drug, despite the fact that we're both a medical marijuana state and a recreational marijuana state. Believe it or not, we were the 13th medical marijuana state. We now have 33 medical marijuana states, including the District of Columbia. So this continues to move forward with respect to those states becoming medical marijuana states. Key questions that our state answered in the past almost 11 years. Should marijuana be a medical option? Our state said yes back in 2008. Should marijuana be a recreational option? Our state said yes back in 2018. So here's some of the key issues certainly that faces us and our community. What would be the unintended consequences by allowing medical and recreational marijuana dispensaries to legally operate in Michigan? We'll come back to that in a second. Just to let you know, in Michigan, so you have a better understanding of where we're at, there are 3 key acts dealing with marijuana. Back in 2008, our state passed the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. Every county voted in favor of that. 63% statewide voted in favor of that. That allowed for medical marijuana in our state to be legal. What we did back in 2016, and you'll start seeing this in your communities, we passed what's called the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act. When I say we, the legislature passed that. That allowed for licensees, depending on what your community decided to do, to come to your community. That would be growers, that would be processors, that would be dispensaries, that would be secured transporters, and that would be medical compliance facility centers. You really should know whether your community has allowed for certain licensees to come to your community. And then the big one, what I'm going to talk about here today, is in 2018, by a vote of 56 to 44% in our state, we passed what's called the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. This allowed us to be a recreational marijuana state. We became the 10th recreational marijuana state in the United States. We're the only Midwest recreational marijuana state. This is what's coming to Michigan. This is in Los Angeles, right near the airport.
Yeah.
Certainly what we have are these billboard signs, California, it's legal. They're both a medical marijuana state and a recreational marijuana state at the same time. We recognize other patients from other states when they come to our state, so they're allowed to have the amount of marijuana here in our state that they would be allowed to have as if you're a patient from our state. This is one plant. You're going to start seeing plants like this being grown this spring and eventually come to this summer and late fall, because as a medical marijuana grower, I can grow 500, 1,000, or 1,500 plants depending on the license. So here's some of the products that come from those plants. You'll see it's not about the joints anymore. It's all about this, and this is what we basically are going to be selling if they're not already selling at medical marijuana dispensaries. THC patches are also very popular, no different than like a fentanyl patch. THC patches are very potent, and they have they have really good strains in these THC patches. You may never know whether somebody's taking THC in their body because it'll be under the sleeve right here or on their ankle, and they be walking around with that THC patch on them. Marijuana tinctures, just to show you how far we've come with marijuana and the different types of products. Look at this particular product. This is actually medicine, and it's also legal under the Recreational Marijuana Act. If you look at what this is, it's the best of both worlds. Cannabis tinctures, also known as Green or Gold Dragon, is an alcohol-based cannabis extract, essentially infused alcohol, 180 proof or higher. So what you do is you put like 4 drops under your tongue, or you can put it in your juices, ice cream, soups, gelatin, mashed potatoes, and gravy or salad dressing. You grind your flower extract, and then you mix the flower extract in a mason jar with high-proof alcohol. High Times recommends the really potent stuff, the Everclear. This is what it looks like. This is actually a bottle of tincture. As a medical marijuana patient, I can have up to 90 ounces of this legally, and also under the recreational marijuana law, that too is legal. All of this is selling, or soon will be selling, in our state because we allow for it to be sold based on what we decided back in 2008 and 2018. All of this will be sold depending on the brand. Yes, even your pet can get marijuana. This is Canna Banana, the Healthy Canine CBD dog treat. CBD comes from the marijuana plant. Also, it can come from the hemp plant, but most of it comes from the marijuana plant. You also deal with the money. The money cannot be put in banks that are federally insured because the feds don't recognize anything that deals with marijuana. So you'll have dispensaries like this that will have a large amount of money at that dispensary. If you want to know whether your community has allowed for one of those medical marijuana licensees to come to your community, you just basically go to this particular site right here, and you'll find out whether your city, township, or village has authorized that through an ordinance in your community. So it's right there if you want to take a picture of that with your phone, and then I'll leave it up there for about a couple seconds. All right, we now have 10 recreational marijuana states, including Michigan. As I mentioned, we were the 10th. State, most are out east or out west. We're the only Midwest recreational marijuana state. This is what's coming next year at this time. This is in Las Vegas, Nevada. They allow for recreational marijuana in Las Vegas, Nevada. So you get off your airplane in Las Vegas, Nevada, and you can pick up your 1 ounce of recreational marijuana at Planet 13 right down the street. We allow a larger amount of marijuana, more so than any of the other 9 states and the District of Columbia. It's all about this, guys. It's all about the strain. You'll notice the strain for the THC up there for that particular strain, 25%. 2014, we're over 28%. 2016, we're over 32%. And in 2017, we upped the strain now to over 34%. They got to sell their product. One of the ways they sell their product is through the potency and the strain. So you see certain products like this that will be sold or are being sold at certain dispensaries. This is medicine under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. I'm allowed to have up to an amount that does not exceed 2.5 ounces of this legally. As you can see, it's 80 to 90% THC concentrates. So let's talk about the Recreational Marijuana Act just briefly before I hand it over to one of these 2 gentlemen, or one of these 3 gentlemen. Why Michigan? They knew they had the momentum on their side. They had the resources on their side. The history with the medical marijuana and the election trends told them that it was going to pass in Michigan, and it did pass in Michigan, as I mentioned earlier, very overwhelmingly, 56 to 44%. Not all counties, though, voted in favor of it. The widest gap was Washtenaw County. By far, it was like 73% to 27% in Washtenaw County. Here is the act itself in terms of the different sections. There are 4 key sections, but I just want to talk about 3 of the sections very briefly. Please know what the act allows so you understand as we go forward what individuals in our state can and cannot do in terms of the amount they can possess. Here's what it says right at the top. So please remember the top part. It says individuals aged 21 and older. So they have to be 21 and older. And here's what they can do. They can possess, use, purchase, transport, or process up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana or marijuana-infused products. Here's the next one, too, that deals with the marijuana-infused products. When I talk about marijuana-infused products, those are the products I was talking about with the tinctures, the liquid marijuana. All of that is marijuana-infused products. They can possess, use, purchase, transport, or process up to 15 grams of marijuana concentrate. Here's one that's really fascinating. They can possess, store, or process up to 10 ounces of marijuana in their home. And this is really fascinating. They can grow a total of 12 plants or less in their home and possess all the marijuana produced by those marijuana plants. So that's quite a bit of marijuana that they could have in their home, and certainly it's got to be stored properly. What do they do with a lot of this marijuana? Well, what the law allowed them to do is this. Right here, they can give away up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana or infused products to individuals who are 21 years of age or older. So if I have a lot of marijuana in my home, and I really don't want to keep it, I can give the judge 2.5 ounces, you 2.5 ounces, everybody in this room 2.5 ounces to bring down my supply, so to speak. I cannot sell it to you, though. You can't purchase it from me. You can only purchase it from a recreational marijuana dispensary, and those dispensaries will not come into play until December 2019. This is everything the law doesn't allow. I'm not going to go into this too specifically. One of the big ones is right here. This is the concern certainly with the children. It says possessing marijuana, marijuana-infused products, or marijuana accessories on school grounds, in a school bus, or in a correctional facility. And then you see all the other prohibitions, including this one's a big one too. You can't consume marijuana in a public place or smoke marijuana where the owner, occupant, or manager of a property prohibits it. And you can't smoke marijuana within the passenger area of a vehicle upon a public highway. Now this one I want to come back to because certainly you'll see how this comes into play with the penalty section. I'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to skip some of this because of time, so much the driving. These are the different types of licensees under the Recreational Marijuana Act that eventually will be issued depending on whether the municipality wants them to come to that municipality. Notice now we have up to 2,000 plants. We have processors, retailers, and so forth. And the municipality really has all the power. They can opt out, basically saying you're not coming to our city, village, or township. They have really up until the end of the year to do that. If they do that, guess what? Then these recreational marijuana licensees will have to go somewhere else. But even if that is the case, they say we don't want anybody to come to our municipality, guess what? The electors within that municipality may petition to initiate an ordinance as long as they get 5% of the votes cast for the governor in that municipality in the last election. So even the municipality says they opt out, meaning they don't want any of this to come to their municipality. Those individuals in that community can say, guess what? We see your ordinance. We really want them to come. Therefore, we're going to start our own petition drive and have the community vote on it. Just a couple other things. I'm going to skip this. Employers, it does not require an employer to permit or accommodate conduct allowed by the act in the workplace or on the employer's property. That's a big thing that's in the act. Same with the landlords. Landlords can prevent it on their property, but they can't prevent the marijuana-infused products or what are called the medibles on the property because that's not the smoking aspect of those particular products. I'm going to skip the taxes for right now. I do want to go to this one right here. Section 3 is a big one. This deals with those individuals under the age of 21 and under the age of 18. So this is how it works with those individuals. You'll notice it says, and this is really important because you really need to understand what is allowed for, and what is considered a civil infraction and what's considered a misdemeanor and what's considered a felony for these individuals that are under the age of 21 and under the age of 18. So here's what it says, and I'll go through this slowly. It says at the top, except for a person who engaged in conduct described by section 41A, 41D, or 41G, if a person is under 21 years of age and possesses not more than 2.5 ounces of marijuana, or who cultivates not more than 12 marijuana plants, for a first offense, they're looking at a civil infraction, and then a second offense, they're looking at a civil infraction. Here's how it works. If they violate any of that that's not in bold, they're looking at the penalties that were in place prior to the act taking effect. But here's what is the big one right here. If they possess marijuana-infused products, like that 16-year-old boy or girl who comes to school with marijuana, and they have an amount that's not more than 2.5 ounces, guess what? They're possessing marijuana-infused products, or marijuana accessories on school grounds in a school bus or a correctional facility. That's a civil infraction, all right, for a first offense and a second offense. So the school certainly knows that, so they're looking at putting in place certain policies to really address that particular issue. Everything else in bold here, if the amount that they have in their possession, like a 16-year-old boy or girl, is less than 2.5 ounces, and they transfer marijuana or marijuana-infused products to anyone under 21, they're looking at a civil infraction, all of the bold civil infraction for a first offense and a second offense. That's what we have. I'm going to skip some of the other penalties. Certainly, this is some of the unintended consequences if you don't know what you're doing with marijuana. Here's an example of what's called a butane hash oil explosion. This happened in Redford Township, as you can see back on August 31st, 2017. There were 3 individuals in the home. They were doing what's called BHOing. BHOing is this. If you take this is a test tube right here, and you pack it with high quality marijuana strain. You want to strip that strain, so you put the butane in there, the butane strips it, and then what you have is you've got this little pewter tray with what's called the dab or the wax. Well, that dab or wax still has the butane in it, so you have to get rid of it. So the way you get rid of it, unfortunately, sadly for some of these individuals, they do it the wrong way. They put it in a frying pan, they turn the frying pan on, and then when the frying pan's turned on with that in the frying pan, the butane evaporates in the air, it gets into the pilot lights or the refrigerator lights, and it blows up your home. So here in this particular case, in Redford Township, these 3 individuals were doing what's called butane hash oiling, or butane BHOing, and they, the explosion was so bad that they literally burned the clothes right off their bodies, and 1 individual died, and the other two were seriously injured. The point that I'm making here is BHOing is a really, really bad practice to do in your home, but you're looking for that high THC potency. That's why they're doing it. They want that 80-90% THC potency from that dab or that wax. Here's another thing that we anticipate will be coming next year. This is very popular in Colorado, gas and grass. You can go to the gas station and you can pick up your marijuana right there at the gas station. I anticipate this coming next year at this time in our state. That's all I have. I just wanted to give you an overview, then I'm going to hand it to the experts to go into a little more detail as to how to address this particular issue.
At Dawn Farm for 25 years now. And when I first started at Dawn Farm, consistently the substance people first used was alcohol. And for the last 15 years, very consistently the substance people first used most often is cannabis. So more and more we're seeing that as something people are using before. People who end up in treatment, cannabis is something they're using before alcohol. And anecdotally, at least half of our clients, even though they present for problems with other drugs, at least half of them are regular cannabis users. I mean, at least once a week, often daily. Very few, another reason I don't see any big difference in the short term is very few of our admissions are ordered to treatment for cannabis-related offenses. So we don't see people generally coming to treatment for cannabis possession or something like that. However, we do see a lot of people who are on probation for some other crime, and they tested positive for cannabis while they were on probation, and they ended up getting ordered to treatment under those circumstances. And honestly, I don't know how courts are going to handle that. If the status quo will continue, or if they'll make changes in what they test for and the conditions under which they order treatment, so that remains to be seen. I don't foresee the legal status making any big difference in use by our clients. We've had medical marijuana now for 10 years, and I drive to work, so I work in Ypsilanti, and I get off the freeway, and more often than not, there are signs at the freeway exit saying, get your green card, $75. So, anybody who wants a cannabis card can get one. And we see a lot of people who have cannabis cards. So they're easy to get, and we've also had retail dispensaries around Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti for quite some time. So that's been around for a while. There are a couple of things that from our perspective, or my perspective, might be good as a result of this. One is that I've been very concerned about synthetic cannabinoids, and the legalization of cannabis might, kind of short circuit the development of that market and development of synthetic cannabinoids. I hope so. So that might be a good thing. The other thing that might be really unique to Dawn Farm is over the last 10 years, we've seen more and more people come in who have medical cards. And the relationship they have with cannabis is different than the relationship they have with other drugs as a result of the medical card. A lot of these people got their medical cards, by, feigning some medical complaint, complaining about chronic pain or nausea as a result of chronic anxiety or something like that. But over time, as they begin to think of it as medicine, and they come in and they're like, no, this isn't something I use for fun to get high and stuff like that. This is my medicine. And the relationship to it is different than they have with beer or they have with heroin or something like that. So, that is one way in which medical marijuana has complicated our clients' relationship with cannabis, or a lot of our clients' relationship with cannabis. Now, our position is there are a lot of legal medications that are dangerous for somebody in recovery to be using. You could be prescribed benzodiazepines for anxiety, or sleep medications, or muscle relaxers, or opioids. And all those would be perfectly legal, but the legal status doesn't make them safe. So that's always been the position we take with clients. But it has changed the way they think about cannabis. So a few things I worry about as a result of this. I worry about the kind of marketing we're going to see and where that will take place. I worry about the outlet density. One of the things we know about alcohol is the more outlets there are for liquor in a community, the more alcohol is consumed in that community. So I'm concerned about outlet density, for dispensaries influencing the amount of cannabis that's used in a community. My biggest concern, and that's what this slide is about age of first use. So this is a pretty old study from 1997. This looks at alcohol dependence based on age of first use. So this study found that people who began using alcohol, and their threshold was using it for more than just a taste or just a sip, you know. So people whose drinking began before the age of 14 had dramatically increased risk of developing alcohol dependence later in life. And you see it decline, you know, the older the person gets. So by the time you get up to 20 and 21, you're around 10%. So the risk of developing alcohol dependence later in life drops dramatically the longer you keep somebody from beginning to drink. We have no idea what this is like for other substances. And you know, you could say that risk-taking behavior is a predictor of a substance dependence or substance use disorder later in life. So that maybe these people are, you know, this is a sign of their risk-taking, not a cause of their substance dependence. And you know, we don't really know that for sure, but that's a pretty strong relationship. And so we don't know what this might be like for cannabis. Brain researchers speculate that, you know, these younger ages are having a lot of what they call neuroplasticity, brain plasticity changes happening in people's brains that is influenced by using those substances. So that's one concern. And the other thing I'd say about age of first use is, you know, some of the things we already talked about may lower age of first use, you know, its availability in terms of retail and outlet density. But the other thing I've been thinking about is, you know, I have neighbors who smoke weed, and you know, and I don't know that they have any problem with it, but its legal status has kind of had them put the brakes on it quite a bit. You know, they use it when they don't have their kids over the weekend. They use it later at night, and I wonder what its legal status is how it's gonna change the way they use it. You know, they'll no longer feel like they shouldn't use it in front of their kids, or use it throughout the day. So I think the way kids see adults use it is likely to change, and that may contribute to a lower age of first use. Another thing that concerns me is some of you may have heard of an addiction treatment researcher and historian named Bill White. He wrote a book called Slaying the Dragon, and he's really been one of the most influential people in the addiction treatment system in the United States over the last 20 years. And I saw him once give a presentation on drug trends. And towards the end of the presentation, he was asked, Bill, what do you think is going to be the major drug problem of the future? And his response was, you know, I don't really know, I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is that whatever drug that is already here. And somebody's going to figure out a new way to use it. And it's going to change the relationship between the user and the drug. And he pointed to two examples as he said this. One was that opium has been around for centuries. People used to chew it and smoke it, and it was never a huge problem. I mean, it was a problem, but not a huge problem. And then along came the syringe, you know, a change in technology for how people use the drug. And then people figured out how to refine it and turn it into heroin or morphine and make it injectable. And it completely changed the relationship between the user and the drug. And the other example he gave was cocaine. Up until crack, cocaine was thought to be a rich person's party drug, too expensive, you know, for it to ever become a big problem in the United States. And somebody figured out how to put it into crack, and so that people could basically freebase it, smoke it, and it again completely changed the relationship between the user and the drug. So this chart looks at various, what they call capture rates for various drugs. And the blue line for each substance shows the percentage of the general population that uses that at some point in their life. So tobacco, approximately 75% of people will use tobacco at some point in their life. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 23-24% of the population develops dependence upon tobacco over the course of their life. And and therefore the capture rate for tobacco is about 32%. So about 32% of the people who try it will develop a more chronic problem. Heroin, the percentage of people who ever try heroin is very low. The percentage of people who develop heroin dependence is also low. But the capture rate was about 24% in the study. And this study was done in 1994. And this was before fentanyl, you know, and this would be revisited. But most people who use opioids, you know, feel queasy, sick, don't really like it, and, you know, get off it as soon as they can. But some people love it, you know, and it becomes a lifelong problem. Cocaine's capture rate was 17%. Alcohol's capture rate in the study was 15.4%. You know, 90% of the population uses it at some point in their life. About 13% develop dependence, and about 15% capture rate. And cannabis's capture rate was around 9%. So this brings me back to Bill White's comment about, I can't tell you what the major drug problems of the future are going to be, but I can tell you that it's already here and somebody's going to figure out a way to use it. I mean, I'm not making a prediction. I don't know what's going to happen with marijuana, but some of the things I see concern me. And, you know, we've got new cultivations that increase potency. We just heard about that. So you've got more potent plants. You got new preparations, you know, like wax and dabs, that kind of thing. And then you've got new routes of administration, you know, like vaporizing, that kind of thing. So I don't know that that's going to turn into, you know, the major problem of the future, but you've got these changes in method of administration, preparation, and potency that I don't think, you know, we'll continue to see it stay at around 9%. How high it'll go, I don't know, but I anticipate that will go up. So that's all from me.
With our community, one of the things that we are dealing with is setting the community standards. The community has certain standards within our township, but more importantly, we have to balance that with the law, and we're fortunate to have the judges here, but Ken has been wonderful in just getting us up to speed as fast as possible in how we're going to address these issues, policies, and procedures with the police department. For example, you're going to see the canines, the ones that we do have, they're going to go away, and we're going to bring in dogs that are more focused on the problems at hand with the community, which are the harder drugs like heroin and cocaine and those issues. With that, though, with our officers and groups like FAN, we're really focused on removing that stigma, both with recovery, getting people in recovery, and with mental illness. And they kind of go hand in hand quite often for us because of the crisis that we often find people in. We're not out in the community setting opinions, we're enforcing the law, helping people find help. You know, we're connected with Hope Not Handcuffs, we're connected with Western Wayne Recovery, we're finding coaches, we're teaching our employees, our new workforce the change on a dime. Marijuana is become more legal. There's certain statutes, as you see. Day-to-day operations, we'll see potentially some civil infractions at the school. That's essentially what it means for the police department. We have to triage what's most important to the community, and as you're seeing, with 56% of the vote, people have changed their perception of marijuana. That's going to result, maybe, as we are inferring here, some more addictions, maybe, I don't know. That's not the police, that's not our job. Our job is to help. We are the nexus for trust. We hold the Constitution. We make sure the laws are followed. So to educate our people is a very important balance that we have to do. Stigma, it's interesting because right now we're working with the judges with bond and getting people help, especially new warrants. If someone comes in through our police department and they've committed, most of the time it's a retail fraud type offense, we're trying to find if they'll accept some type of treatment. And that's a big undertaking because you'll have 30 years of police officers cutting citations and pushing the problem off to another day. Yeah. And to work work with the court system, St. Mary's Hospital, or any hospital that I work with this, Wayne County Mental Health Authority. Those are the big issues that we're dealing with. Marijuana, as it relates to the police department, I don't know the future. The impact, I have no idea. I suspect our youth are going to be using it more. Canton Township's taken a position that vaping is a crime, it's a misdemeanor. So we've seen citations in the recent past where a child will receive a citation for vaping and get a civil infraction for marijuana. So think about the logic of that. So we're looking at working with our elected officials. Our elected officials, I don't think it's been reported to Lara yet, but as a community, we're opted out, as I understand it. I don't think it's been reported yet to Lara. We're here for you. You pay us to be here for you. And today, the questions with this panel, we may be able to address some of your questions, but it's real important that we work together to address these problems. Our officers are going to be out. They're going to be taught, and hopefully transition some people that are in crisis mode to get some help. That's how you, in my opinion, transition for what we call keeping Canton can. That means for everybody, not just those that are non-addicted. That's for those who are addicted, like the man in the back, sober. So we want to try to help people get to that point. So that's what our police department's about. We're going to hold people accountable. We're not washing our hands of crimes, but there's ways to do that and still hold people accountable. So thank you.
Well, when Governor Whitmer was elected, one of the first things that she talked about was with the decriminalization of marijuana, about potentially finding ways to let people out of prison that are in prison for those offenses, as well as allowing people that have had convictions in the past that may be preventing them from getting jobs, from expunging those and getting them off their records. So at that point in time, I started thinking about what I wanted to do with the people that were on probation to me. So I had our probation department give them a list of criteria, and I wanted to see all of these files. First criteria was that it was a first-time offender for marijuana or for possession of narcotic paraphernalia, no other drug offenses. The second criteria was that it was being taken under a delayed sentencing type statute that would allow them to keep it off of their record. The next criteria was that they completed all of their terms and conditions of probation. And then finally, that they had not violated by testing positive at any point in time during their probation. So I thought at first that was going to be a pretty large task. It turned out that I only got about 25 files, so it wasn't too bad. I was able to look through each one of them, make sure all the criteria was met. And the reason that I wanted to make sure there hadn't been any use is to make sure that they didn't have a substance abuse problem. So they tested clean when they came in, and for any of the testing during that time period. Most of them had been on probation for over 6 months. Some of them were only a couple, 3 weeks away from getting off of probation after a full year. So I wrote all those individuals a letter, told them that they'd been granted their delayed sentencing statute, their file was closed out, and advised them that marijuana is probably not all that good for you anyways, and potentially could be a civil infraction depending on how you were in possession of it, and whether, depending on the interpretation of some points of the law, and I'll talk to Mr. Stecker about this afterwards. There's always some interesting things in these legislations that can lead to further confusion. But so with that, I let all those people off. If it was a second offense or somebody that tested positive, it was another type of drug offense, all those people are still on probation with the same conditions as of a year ago, which would include no use of marijuana, because one, it's illegal under federal law, and when you're on probation, you can't violate a law of any governmental unit. Two, it still is a substance that can cause you problems in your life, and if it's your second offense, or it's another drug, that's certainly something that we need to keep mindful of and keep the community safe, as Director Boss said, about our concern for the community. So we take a different look at it if it was a multiple offense situation. We do have a number of people that are on probation for an offense, let's say like operating while intoxicated by alcohol. That is a substance crime, and we're going to make sure that people stay away from substances when they're on probation for that crime, which is going to include marijuana as well. So following the law as it's been adopted now, I think certainly going forward with the limited number of potential civil infractions that could come to a district court by an adult, 17 years of age and older, I don't think that's really something that I'm really going to see anything at all of. I don't see that. We've got police department representative could potentially.
With our community, one of the things that we are dealing with is setting the community standards. The community has certain standards within our township, but more importantly, we have to balance that with the law, and we're fortunate to have the judges here, but Ken has been wonderful in just getting us up to speed as fast as possible in how we're going to address these issues, policies, and procedures with the police department. For example, you're going to see the canines, the ones that we do have, they're going to go away, and we're going to bring in dogs that are more focused on the problems at hand with the community, which are the harder drugs like heroin and cocaine and those issues. With that, though, with our officers and groups like FAN, we're really focused on removing that stigma, both with recovery, getting people in recovery, and with mental illness. And they kind of go hand in hand quite often for us because of the crisis that we often find people in. We're not out in the community setting opinions, we're enforcing the law, helping people find help. You know, we're connected with Hope Not Handcuffs, we're connected with Western Wayne Recovery, we're finding coaches, we're teaching our employees, our new workforce to change on a dime. Marijuana is become more legal. There's certain statutes as you see. Day-to-day operations, we'll see potentially some civil infractions at the school. That's essentially what it means to the police department. We have to triage what's most important to the community, and as you're seeing, with 56% of the vote, people have changed their perception of marijuana. That's going to result, maybe, as we are inferring here, some more addictions, maybe, I don't know. That's not the police, that's not our job. Our job is to help. We are the nexus for trust. We hold the Constitution. We make sure the laws are followed. So to educate our people is a very important balance that we have to do. Stigma, it's interesting because right now we're working with the judges with bond and getting people help, especially new warrants. If someone comes in through our police department and they've committed, most of the time it's a retail fraud type offense, we're trying to find if they'll accept some type of treatment. And that's a big undertaking because you'll have 30 years of police officers cutting citations and pushing the problem off to another day. Yeah. And to work with the court system, St. Mary's Hospital or any hospital that'll work with this, Wayne County Mental Health Authority, those are the big issues that we're dealing with. Marijuana, as it relates to the police department, I don't know the future. The impact, I have no idea. I suspect our youth are going to be using it more. Canton Township's taken a position that vaping is a crime, it's a misdemeanor. So we've seen citations in the recent past where a child will receive a citation for vaping and get a civil infraction for marijuana. Mm-hmm. So think about the logic of that. Okay. So we're looking at working with our elected officials. Our elected officials, I don't think it's been reported to Lara yet, but as a community, we're opted out, as I understand it. I don't think it's been reported yet to Lara. We're here for you. You pay us to be here for you. And today, the questions with this panel, we may be able to address some of your questions, but it's real important that we work together to address these problems. Our officers are going to be out. They're going to be taught, and hopefully transition some people that are in crisis mode to get some help. That's how you, in my opinion, transition for what we call keeping Canton can. That means for everybody, not just those that are non-addicted. That's for those who are addicted, like the man in the back, sober. So we want to try to help people get to that point. So that's what our police department's about. We're going to hold people accountable. We're not washing our hands of crimes, but there's ways to do that and still hold people accountable. So thank you.
Governor Whitmer was elected, one of the first things that she talked about was with the decriminalization of marijuana, about potentially finding ways to let people out of prison that are in prison for those offenses, as well as allowing people that have had convictions in the past that may be preventing them from getting jobs, from expunging those and getting them off their record. So at that point in time, I started thinking about what I wanted to do with the people that were on probation to me. So I had our probation department give them a list of criteria, and I wanted to see all of these files. First criteria was that it was a first-time offender for marijuana or for possession of narcotic paraphernalia, no other drug offenses. The second criteria was that it was being taken under a delayed sentencing type statute that would allow them to keep it off of their record. The next criteria was that they completed all of their terms and conditions of probation. And then finally, that they had not violated by testing positive at any point in time during their probation. So I thought at first that was going to be a pretty large task. It turned out that I only got about 25 files, so it wasn't too bad. I was able to look through each one of them, make sure all the criteria was met. And the reason that I wanted to make sure there hadn't been any use is to make sure that they didn't have a substance abuse problem. So they tested clean when they came in, and for any of the testing during that time period. Most of them had been on probation for over 6 months. Some of them were only a couple, 3 weeks away from getting off of probation after a full year. So I wrote all those individuals a letter, told them that they'd been granted their delayed sentencing statute, their file was closed out, and advised them that marijuana is probably not all that good for you anyways, and potentially could be a civil infraction depending on how you were in possession of it, and whether, depending on the interpretation of some points of the law, and I'll talk to Mr. Stecker about this afterwards. There's always some interesting things in these legislations that can lead to further confusion. But so with that, I let all those people off. If it was a second offense or somebody that tested positive, it was another type of drug offense, all those people are still on probation with the same conditions as of a year ago, which would include no use of marijuana, because one, it's illegal under federal law, and when you're on probation, you can't violate a law of any governmental unit. Two, it still is a substance that can cause you problems in your life, and if it's your second offense, or it's another drug, that's certainly something that we need to keep mindful of and keep the community safe, as Director Boss said, about our concern for the community. So we take a different look at if it was a multiple offense situation. We do have a number of people that are on probation for an offense that's, say, like operating while intoxicated by alcohol. That is a substance crime, and we're going to make sure that people stay away from substances when they're on probation for that crime, which is going to include marijuana as well. So following the law as it's been adopted now, I think certainly going forward with the limited number of potential civil infractions that could come to a district court by an adult, 17 years of age and older, I don't think that's really something that I'm really going to see anything at all of. I don't see that. We've got police department representative could